Hi, I'm Teresa Ruth Howard, and I'm going to tell you a story of how a plain brown girl came to hate her body. So I started dancing at the age of 3, and around 8 or 9, as my body began to develop, it was clear that I was already naturally very muscular, but I had these strange sort of overdeveloped muscles on my hips, my hip area. No one could kind of explain why. Most of my teachers told me that I was probably working incorrectly, that I was tucking or something, and that was it. But as I began to develop, they developed, and so I had strong thighs, a strong butt, and this added mass of extra overdeveloped muscle on my hips. Went through my whole career. No one could ever explain it. It was just an anomaly. I was either doing something wrong or nobody could explain it. I hated that part of my body. Nobody else had it. I thought it made me look mannish, and it made me bigger and bulkier than I needed to be. Flash forward, end up with a hip problem, get an x-ray and an MRI, and go to Dr. Weiss to be diagnosed. So he comes in after reading my film, and he looks at me and he says, have you ever dislocated before? And I was like, no. And he said, are you sure? And I said, well, I think that's something that I would remember. And he was like, that's interesting, and I'll tell you why. So he puts my film up on the light board, and he shows me exactly what has him perplexed. And I'll show you on my makeshift light board, which is not a light board at all. So here are my x-rays. That's my hips. There they are. As you can see, it's a ball and socket joint. So technically there's supposed to be a socket and the ball is supposed to sit in it. If you can look carefully, it's very, very shallow, almost non-existent. This part, the socket part, is called your acetabulum. And, when it's shallow, it's called hip dysplasia. And that's quite normal. But this apparently was very extreme as per Dr. Weiss. And he says normally something this shallow would result in dislocation. Well, I never dislocated. So these are my hips as I'm lying down flat. Now this is the joint when I'm rotated, like turned out, and you can see that really there's not that much of the ball that's actually in the socket. If you look at the darker area, that's behind the ball. So that's the only part. Only up until here is my hip in the socket. That freaked me out. Totally freaked me out, okay? So Dr. Weiss and I came to the conclusion that this extra bulk or this extra mass around my hip flexors was the thing that kept my leg in the socket. And it was very extraordinary to me because I always hated that area of my body. And I'll show it to you now so that you can get an idea of why I actually hated it so very, very much. So this is not muscle. This is muscle. This is not bone. So you see how it kind of sticks out? I hate that. Now that in combination with the booty and the thigh makes me look a lot broader. Here's the trick thing. My bone is actually here. Here, wait. Tuck this in. So my bones are actually here. This is how narrow my hips really are. The rest of this, that's muscle. This is muscle. See, it's curved. I was talking to Dr. Weiss, and he explained to me that my body was actually held together by this thing that I just loathe so much. It sort of changed my perspective about it. It's kind of like people who have multiple personalities. The mind is adept enough to know when it's in danger, so it fractures and creates other personalities that are able to deal with stressful situations better than the original personality itself. My body was smart enough to be able to hold itself together or figure out a way of holding itself together in a way that my skeletal structure wouldn't allow. And I think that's kind of cool. And even though aesthetically I don't like it, I have to really appreciate it because I didn't have the pain of dislocation and I was able to dance, and that's what I love. So I guess what it boils down to is even though aesthetically I don't like that area of my body, I really do have to accept it and appreciate it and really respect it, because when you think about it, my body's kind of cool that it like held itself together when I'm actually built like a Barbie doll. And so let that be a lesson to us all that sometimes things aren't what they seem on the surface, and below the surface there's some other stuff going on that are some of the reasons why we look the way we do. And until we dig a little deeper, sometimes it doesn't make sense. But either way, you know, our bodies work for us. So keep that in mind. And my hips don't lie. See you soon.